The next presenter is online, Mr. Kunal Mule. He is astrophysicist with research interests in gravitational wave, multi-messenger astronomy, compact objects, black holes, neutron stars, white dwarfs, astrophysical jets, astronomical surveys and techniques. So maybe he also would be able to add on a few points and comments later on to what we were discussing. So the topic for his presentation is perception, space and time, right? Yeah. So over to Mr. Kunal Mule.
So thank you very much for the kind introduction. I just want to make sure that I'm being heard properly. And in just a moment, I hope my screen would be visible as well. So good evening to everyone. Thank you very much for the kind introduction. And I'm a research scientist. I'm an astrophysicist at the California Institute of Technology. I'll keep my talk very short since I know that there is one more talk to go between now and dinner, of course. So thank you very much, firstly, for inviting me to give this talk on perception of space-time and the cosmos. In this talk, I'll address three very basic points that I believe are relevant to this conference. But again, my presentation is going to be quite different from the previous ones that we've seen today or even yesterday. So first point that I'll address is, despite great advances in our understanding of the physical universe, exploration of a more fundamental question, which is that of the perception of space and time itself, on which our theories of the physical universe are completely dependent on, has not been addressed satisfactorily at all. The second point is that the universe is this physical universe is possibly one out of many realities that we can access. And the third point is that a careful investigation of the metaphysics, and especially a careful investigation of concepts like matter, mind, and consciousness given in Indian knowledge system, including Puranic references, may help in reconciling the various perspectives on the cosmos given by Siddhantic, Puranic, and current observational astronomy. So just this one picture here is showing you from an astrophysical standpoint. We understand our observable universe is organized in terms of solar systems and planets on the smallest scales, and as galaxies and galaxy clusters on the largest scales. Really, our understanding of reality is completely dependent on perception of space and time. And although both space and time are very intuitive concepts in our daily life, according to current scientific wisdom, space and time form a system of extreme complexity and may defy even more the most ardent efforts to understand these concepts. In Albert Einstein's general theory of relativity, for example, which formulates that gravity is not a force, but it's something that propagates through space, a feature of space and time itself, where matter, energy, space, and time are all intricately connected. So at a microscopic level, we find that everything is quantized in the sense that everything is made up of tiny building blocks. For example, light is made up of photons, and this is the whole point of quantum mechanics, for example, right? Some of you may have heard of it. So there is good reason to believe that space and time themselves must be quantized. But our understanding of the universe at a fundamental level is incomplete because we do not have a theory yet for what the building blocks of this space and time are, or in other words, we do not have a theory of quantum gravity. So this, sorry for the two very technical slides. I'll be a little more accessible to the general audience here in the forthcoming slides. But so the picture that I'm trying to present is as follows, okay? While there are these missing pieces of the puzzle, which I mentioned as quantum gravity and all these technical aspects in our quest to understand the physical universe, we can ask this question whether this is everything that exists in reality, right? And here I argue that the process of perception and more generally cognition forms the basis of the information that we gather from the world around us, and the very basis for our understanding of reality. So we've all heard of these concepts of pramanas, etc. So this is sort of the pratyaksha aspect of it. The theories of the physical world that we've built in terms of physics or generally the sciences are all dependent on perception, and without cognition there cannot be any observation of the world and no theories to describe it. So in our current scientific endeavors, we have removed this cognitive apparatus, which I've shown here as a black box, and the observer completely from the equations, and given an objective framework to reality, which we describe as the physical world. So this has worked wonders, of course, in explaining how the world works. And I know there are pros and cons of this, but self-consistent theories exist where we can make predictions, and we are all reaping its benefits in terms of science and technology. So, but really what we have to understand that if we change this cognitive apparatus, our whole view of the world and the theories that we build to explain this world around us could be completely different. And so without understanding this cognitive apparatus, our understanding of reality is incomplete, and we can never say whether this is the only reality that exists or there exist infinite other realities. So it really gets very interesting when we try to break open this black box, which is really, I mean, the incomplete picture in current scientific investigations is it brings up these fascinating questions like what are the mind and consciousness? How do we experience space and time? Why do we experience only 3 dimensions of space, and so on? And in order to explain this apparatus, current scientific efforts are investigating the brain, of course, as many of us know. And although we can identify these neural correlates of mind activity, perceptual, sense perceptual activity, and consciousness, we do not understand how this neural activity gives rise to qualitative subjective experience. So that is the biggest problem right now in mind and consciousness related studies in current science. So within mainstream, there are various explanations invoked to really try and explain this out further, like quantum mechanics or panpsychism, where which ascribes mental and consciousness properties to all of matter, or integration of information, or things like that. And specifically in the context of memory of space and time, 2 regions of the brain, namely the hippocampus and the entorhinal cortex, have been found to play a critical role. And again, this finding has led to the 2014 Nobel Prize in Physiology and Medicine. So it's such a great finding and a great thing considered in current science that even understanding the correlates of mental and consciousness properties within the brain is quite a big deal. But despite all these efforts, this bottom-up approach of starting with matter and brain has been unsuccessful in explaining mind and consciousness. So, and this is exactly what is called the hard problem of consciousness. Again, without getting in too much into the details, I personally see there are 2 problems currently existing in understanding this cognitive apparatus within scientific endeavors. One is, how do we really disentangle the brain function from the processes of cognition, mind, and what exactly is consciousness, right? So this is what I call the convolution problem. And there's a well-known hard problem of consciousness of how does this neural activity really gives rise to subjective experience and why? So I would argue that Indian philosophy and generally, especially Sankhya and Yoga philosophy, brings a new perspective to this problem of consciousness. And a simple picture to view this is what I'll show shortly. But in terms of the convoluted problem, I think the hierarchy of functions presented in terms of mind, intellect, identity, and the concept of Atman itself, the conscious being, is transformational. So I think further investigations need to go in this direction. And the hard problem of consciousness might be really not so hard if we look carefully at concepts like Linga Sharira, Prana, and Tanmatra, given Puranas and other Indian philosophical texts. All right, so again, very quickly, this is the model that we can define which is inspired by Indian philosophy for explaining cognition and consciousness. And so we break things up into three categories, right? One is the physical and physical function, the physical world. The other is the subtle body, the mental states, cognitive functions. And then we have, of course, our conscious being, who is the observer of all of this. And this can be, the analogy that can be given here is that mind or subtle body is seen as an interface between the user or the subjective entity or conscious being and a virtual reality or a computer, which it has all these sensors, which is analogous to like the body, physical body. Another interesting analogy, which has been seriously these days in conscious studies, is the concept of virtual reality, right? So if we see the subtle body really as an interface between the physical world and the conscious self, then we can view it as a virtual reality apparatus. And in this picture, for example, the two children are viewing this virtual reality through these goggles, which would be analogous to the conscious being viewing the physical world through the means of the subtle body. So specifically here, I think two concepts, which is internal space and external space, that are defined in the Puranic references, which are governed by these other building blocks, other set of building blocks defined as like Sukshma Parmanu, Drishya Parmanu. I think all of these are really important to explore further if we are to explain this sort of a picture of the existence of a mind and subtle body, which is different from the physical body. And this is already a big deal, of course. Coming from like a philosophical background, we might think of these things as obvious, but really, are we able to explain these with their intricate details such that we can bring this into academia is sort of the real question today, into real scientific investigation. So anyways, I just want to sort of end with these 2 points. One is that there is substantial evidence of the existence of objective alternate realities, be it just the physical world or any other alternate reality apart from just the physical world, through the references to like yogic perception, extrasensory perception, near death and out of body experiences, reincarnation research, spiritual experiences, and also the loads of Puranic references to travel to different realms. Again, I would see this as personally in the current framework, this sort of three aspect framework is this can be viewed as viewing different virtual realities. So I would end with making the point that all these concepts within Indian knowledge system, especially internal and external space, are important to explore from a practical as well as a theoretical perspective, if we are to understand the differences between the Puranic and Siddhantic and current observational astronomical perspectives of the cosmos and of reality itself. So thank you. If there are any questions, I'd be happy to take them.
Thank you so much, Mr. Kunal. I asked on behalf of you if there are any specific questions, but at this point of time, they are with you. We understood your complete presentation. On your behalf, I just wanted to update you. On your behalf, I asked if there are any specific questions, but they aren't, so they are with you on the presentation. And thank you so much for the presentation. Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah. Thank you for waiting through.
Absolutely. Thank you. Thank you.
I hope you could also hear the applaud.
Well, on my side, I was only seeing link connecting. I couldn't hear all.
Yeah, so they were all applauding for you. Okay, great job.